Okay, welcome to the weekly review. You've got myself, Kenny, and James on the line. So we're starting with the usual stuff that we look at. So we've got the dollar index here on the weekly chart. We've drawn a box here. We've got three greens in a row, and I think this area could be a potential area where price hits before we kind of roll over back into this wick here, and then test this wick to see what it looks like. We are in the KC channel, so we are in a kind of relatively strong area at the moment. But normally you tend to do kind of a switch when you go back. You switch back first from a lower high. If this is all you're gonna get from the fall, then continue going up, and by then you have all these moving averages would have crossed and giving you the energy to go up. So that's what I'm seeing on the dollar. So next week, potential move into this box, maybe to the nine, which is sitting around 1015, and then roll over is what I'm seeing on the dollar. So I'm just gonna stop sharing, and then James can give us a view.
Yeah, I think I agree with Kenny. But as far as he thinks we're going to get up towards the 61.8 level, I think that we are going to just roll over. If we go and we fill out the top part of this wick at the blue, I think that's as much upward motion as we'll get because when we go into the weekly, these are bearish candles. Three soldiers. I don't think we have much left here, considering we ended the week right at the 78 and we go into the 4 hour and we're just bunny hopping here and eventually I think we roll over. But upside potential, as Kenny said, 61.8 would be in the cards. That's all I got for Dixie.
So our next pair we're discussing is the Nasdaq. So the Nasdaq on the weekly chart is quite still looking positive. I mean, this is a rejection candle. So what I would like to see is for us to continue going up because the lower price is being rejected here. I need to go to like the 4 hours and see what's happening on the 4 hours. So you can see here on the 4 hours. We've got, I think it's the 12 hours. Yes, this is the one I like. So we've got a pink candle here, which I think will be exceeded before we continue going up. So I think maybe we come to around here. This is also another pink candle, but that's already been exceeded. So I think for me, we get to somewhere here, exceed it, maybe come to this line. I don't want us to go below this line, which is the middle of the band. Because if we do, then chances are we will go right here to close this gap. So if we break this, if we break and confirm on 12 hours below the middle of the KC channel, then your target is here to come and close this gap down here. So, but there's still more upside. I mean, despite even if we drop up to here, there's still more upside. I would expect this to continue going up on the Nasdaq to form a new all-time high. Um, Even if we come back to here, we'll continue to go up. So that's what I'm seeing on the Nasdaq. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass it over to James to.
Yeah, if you'll remember the drawing I made last week, still kind of the same idea. Something cool I saw that we didn't end up getting to is actually when I draw this yellow line, it kind of lined up perfectly with this midline VWAP. I don't think I knew that in the moment. I think we were looking at the weekly. Then we go down to the daily, kind of encompasses what we're talking about. There is liquidity, up here, even though 50% of this candle has been recovered here, right here. That's been recovered. So I don't think there's too much liquidity up here. This is fully recovered. We just recovered this green wick here. Um, I don't think there's much to go up and grab. this could, I'm thinking, something we could make an inverted head and shoulders here, this being one shoulder, this being the head, and we're gonna print the other shoulder here. I'm not really seeing it. I mean, we could continue to run. When you look at the weekly, you can kind of see a bit more liquidity up at that level right here. But we are still under the mid Bollinger. And our pattern that we were talking about last week is after we go and we touch this lower band, we have some chop sideways for a couple weeks. As you could see, like right here, when we come towards this midline Bollinger, we got a couple weeks of sideways. This one we didn't really see any sideways at the midpoint. This one had a couple weeks, maybe two or three. And as we come up, it kind of gets more aggressive. So how we react here at this 20,500 level is going to tell us if we can break above this and continue to print bullish. I agree with Kenny as far as new all-time highs. But as far as right now, I think we have a little bit more of sideways or maybe even down as we kind of consolidate at this level. That's all I got for Naz.
Okay, guys. So the next pair is it's SPX. SPX is very similar to the Nasdaq for me. They kind of have a similar pattern. So if you look at the weekly chart again, um, it's showing weakness, but it doesn't mean that it's the end of the move. Similar to how you had this one here, and you just came back down and just shot up. Very, very likely that's what happens. We may come all the way down again. I think somewhere here. I really wouldn't want price to fall below here. Otherwise, if it does, then chances are, we come down to close, a gap. There's a gap somewhere below. If I go to the daily chart, have a look at the daily chart. There's the gap here, right? So, you know, we will have to close this gap. So if we break below the middle, if we come and break below the middle of the KC channel, that means we are into a weaker territory. And therefore, we will continue the journey to come and close this gap around the 5291 zone. And then that gives us a lower high, another lower high. So, and I think if I were just to quickly draw a trend line on it from here, through there, right? That kind of brings you back to those levels. You can violate the line a little bit, but um you can violate this line by zipping and coming back into it. So I think next week, yeah, I'd expect us to pull back somehow, pull back, continue the journey to the upside. On 4 hours, if you look at it on 4 hours, we have a Bollinger, there's a squeeze, there's a KC channel squeeze, there's a Bollinger Band squeeze. We kind of try to go to, the top. We couldn't get to the top of the KC channel, and we've closed back into the band, both bands, back in it, and we kind of closed below the middle line, which is always the line of strength. So I think on 4 hours, it's suggesting we will come down first before going up on 4 hours, which means if we break those lines that I've kind of marked in the line, my line in the sand is here. If we break it, close below this, then you come and close the gap at the bottom here before you continue going down. So I'm gonna pass it over to James to give us a view.
Um, this is gonna sound foolish to say, but I'm seeing different stuff out of SPY, the S&P 500 trust. That SPY is looking a little bit more bullish in my opinion than Nasdaq. I think it shows money starting to move out of tech and back into retail. Um, if I had $1 million, I would be, putting most of my money into SPY versus Nasdaq. Nasdaq just a lot more volatility, and I think SPY just has a more bullish chart. It might sound foolish to say. I know they move together, but One of them is going to be right, and then the other one is going to follow. So, I mean, if SPY continues to move up and be bullish here, you could see we've had two weekly closes above this mid Bollinger Band. I think the upward pressure is going to be on SPY. It might drag Nasdaq up. That could happen. Um, but I think SPY is the more bullish looking chart as of right now. Nasdaq is kind of lagging behind, so that's all I got for SPY.
Right. So the next pair we want to talk about is gold. So this one is it's been a short for me for last week. It kind of did well, came down, and then had a switchback, which is what I normally call these kind of reverse moves. I call them switchbacks. So we've had a switchback and we've been rejected. Um, my MACD is red. There is a divergence on there. So divergence here to there is still playing out. Um, I think we'll recover a good proportion of this candle here. I think somewhere around this point, 3023 or even 3000. I think, this area here, the middle of the KC channel, is going to be the likely place where price falls, but before potentially we continue the journey, or if we then fail to hold this, then of course, we're coming all the way back to the bottom part of the KC channel. I see all these price actions as like waves, really, because if you go to the top of the KC channel and you come to the middle and you don't hold, you're going down to the other side of the river. So we've done that. We've gone, exceeded it, come back, and this will be the acid test for gold. If it's able to hold this point, and I will be taking profit on my short here because if it holds here, then of course, and anyway, if it gets here, it's going to bounce back up again. So, I'd rather wait for the bounce and see how it looks like, and then re-enter the short again if I want to re-enter the short. If we go on 4 hours, 4 hours gives us a good confirmation of what's going to happen. So on open, so we can see that, this was the high. We come down and we tried to go up. And unfortunately, we couldn't even get anywhere near the peak. And now we are kind of retracing back. So we kind of went outside the band, come back into the middle part and could not hold the middle part. Now we've come back to the other side of the band. And now we're trying to go up. We've come back to the middle of the band and now we are being rejected back. So this last candle here is a rejection candle. So we've been rejected, which means ultimately we're going to go lower for lower prices. There's also a liquidity here, which needs to be grabbed on this candle. There's liquidity sitting here, which I think will be grabbed. So that will be grabbed. And then there's another liquidity on if it gets really bad. I think it's on this candle. Yeah, it's on 12 hours. There's also liquidity to be grabbed here as well. They didn't grab all of it. They grabbed some, but there's a little bit left here. So those are kind of my scenarios. So I expect this to come down to the 3000 zone, call it 3005. And depending on how the reaction plays out there, this ultimately becomes the target for gold before you get any sort of proper move to the upside. So I'm going to pass it over to James to give us a.
Yeah, so gold, as I said last week, things are getting a little volatile to say the least. All good things have to come to an end. I am hesitant to call tops on things that are this crazy, but it has to happen, sooner or later. Um, so, how to trade this. So, if I was looking for a short on this right now, I would be watching for the break below our upper weekly Bollinger Band, which is at around 3,300, give or take $5. Um, that would be my entry and stop loss. Uh, and I'd go in with a decent amount of leverage, and I would ride this sucker down. We did hit the 2.618. We tagged the 1.618 here nicely and had a nice pullback off of that. But I mean, if we're gonna remain above this upper Bollinger of 3,300, I'm not gonna touch this thing. It could Things like this can shoot up, 10%. You got to wait for confirmation and be willing to jump in because things can get real hairy. We're below the daily upper, so we kind of lost some of that upward pressure. So, as far as lower targets, we are bouncing off of the lower band nicely, and as it sits right now, the lower band is at 2909. So we could see hopefully some of the money move out of gold and into Bitcoin. You see the sellers start coming out of the woodwork here. These are buyers. These green bars they're buyers for sure. Um, but you could see they're getting swallowed up by these red candles. They try to follow it up and then they just get hammered back down by this huge, huge, huge candle. And speaking of, this candle breaks the threshold. So what does that mean? That means there is a magnet on this candlestick right here. There's a magnet. All the whole candle. Doesn't matter if this was recovered a little bit here, doesn't matter. There is a magnet on this candle here. And it's a good fake out point. And it wouldn't really be the end of the world if gold came up and touched this and put in a triple top. Gold loves triple tops. You can go back in time. Pretty sure we did a triple top around like 2020 or something like that. Um, it wouldn't be crazy for gold to do that. And that's why I'm not necessarily trying to jump in a short right now because we are above the weekly Bollinger, which is at 3,300. I'm just going to kind of wait to see because, even though there's a lot of red here, there is a lot of green that usually follows it. So we could have one more test up, grab some of this liquidity, and move back down towards this lower band.
Can
That's
we
all I
look at
got
your
for
4 hour
gold.
chart? Can you show us how your 4 hour is looking?
Lots of liquidity. Oh, well, the liquidity technically on the 4 hour chart has been gobbled up here. So if you want to draw a line, you can kind of see how this method works. So we have liquidity break here. So we're going to go to the candle that did it. We're going to go to the wick. And there it is. So if you were looking at this on the 4 hour, you were going to be able to snipe this within a dollar, and really have your trade is not going into negative at all. So, that's kind of the benefits of trading this threshold break with the PVSRA volume is where the liquidity is because the hardest part of trading is finding entries and exits. If you have that, I feel like 80% of the hard work is out of the way. So just trading this PVSRA method, you can really maximize gains and reduce losses. Let's see what happened over here. This one was kind of instantaneous. This green candle, well, I guess you could say the green candle kind of printed a good trade for us. So we have a green candle that broke threshold right here. So you would be watching for this wick, 100% of it to be recovered, not 90%, not 95%, 100%. If you want to go to 98%, that's fine, but there's no reason to break the rule because the rule works just fine, as you could see here. As you can see here, 100% of the wick, it shows you what wick is going to do it. Then you just boom, snipe. And then, just how much money do you want to make is the question. Because you
Okay,
jump in
cool.
with leverage, that's 6%. So
Yeah.
that's all I got.
All right, cool. Thanks for that. All right, so the next thing I want to quickly touch on is the VIX. So the VIX, obviously, on the weekly chart, still gushing down. Volatility in the market is kind of calmed down a little bit, and we expect that to continue. We had a red candle on the weekly chart, so chances are, even if we even have a small bounce to the upside here, it will continue to go down. Again, back to the 50 EMA, the red line. And then we see what happens when we get there. Might get a bit of a resistance, but MACD is also weak. We've got a MACD crossing coming, which means it's going to go down a little bit more. So it seems like the market will have a few weeks of calmness, not big swings anymore. So that's the volatility index. And then we move on to Bitcoin dominance. Bitcoin dominance, as I have been talking for the last couple of weeks, it's been topping out. And finally, I think we have the confirmation here. So this candle this week will close beneath the KC channel. And that is it's also going to close red, which means next week we're going to go down some more. We may get a small bounce up into Monday, maybe a small bounce up, but definitely more downside. And I think, we'll probably come to the 50 on the weekly. The 50 red line on the weekly is where probably we'll land. And then see what happens there, whether actually we get a proper breakdown or we get a continuation of this move to the upside on dominance. So the altcoins this coming week, you can expect some explosive moves, similar to how we had here when we had a topping out and we came back into the KC channel. We just kind of went down 3 weeks in a row. So you can expect at least 3 weeks in a row of going down, which means the alt will be going up for the next 3 weeks. So that's Bitcoin dominance. We don't want to waste too much time on that. I want to quickly touch on Total 3. Total 3 on a weekly chart, looking very bullish. I think this week we'll close green. Next week we could potentially pull back a little bit. I don't want to see price go below here, which is 841 billion. Because if it does, then you come into the lower parts here, to kind of grab some of the liquidity which is sitting somewhere here. So I'd like us to ideally close, here, the tops here, or worst case scenario, the tops here, right? These tops here, close somewhere there. But this will be the ideal scenario. Close above this. And then, so we close this green, come back into somewhere here, and continue the journey to the upside. So again, altcoins looking very, very good. And we might end up having something like this. So we might end up starting to have something like this, right? Where you have like 3, 4 weeks in a row. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Could be we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We could have 3 in a row coming, which would be good for altcoins. So again, it's looking good for altcoins, I think, in the coming week to continue singing upwards. So that's Total 3. I want to quickly look at the CME chart because it's quite useful. These are big money traders, so what they do on their chart is important. Most importantly, you can see we've got a MACD cross, which has happened on the weekly chart. This is a very strong candle. They close green, green, so I'd expect, a pullback, small pullback, maybe come to the tops here, who knows, 1027. Worst case scenario, I think, somewhere here, which is up, got my alert around 100 and 700, 100,700 would be what I would expect, so 1025 into where my alert is. I don't want price to go below that. If it does, then chances are we'll come and test this wick here, which is still not going to be bad, but I mean, we don't want to see that. And again, it's a very similar picture. We might end up seeing something similar to here, where you get 1, 2, 3 in a row of big candles, big volume candles coming, taking us outside the KC channel and into a new all-time high. So this is looking good on the CME chart. And then IBIT as well. So this is BlackRock's iShares Bitcoin Trust. And again, they close very strongly as well, really strong candle on the weekly chart. If you take it to the daily chart, it's very, very strong. We're outside the KC channel. We're outside the Bollinger Band. This is strong territory. I'd expect us to continue going up. Maybe pull back on this one. We could pull back to about 57.3, 57.29, somewhere there.
and I expect us to send it and keep sending it up. So it's looking good for Bitcoin in terms of these charts, and we'll bring it to the actual Binance Perpetual Bitcoin chart because I got something quite interesting for you guys, right? Um, so I've kind of been playing with timeline, right? Because I think that's one area which I think I haven't really practiced well enough. So I decided to do some timeline. So this week I'd expect us to, if we close the day, this is the daily chart. We are above the KC channel. We are above the Bollinger Band. We are in a strong territory. Maybe we pull back, like I said, to worst case scenario, 105, somewhere here. So this will be my kind of bottom line for the pullback. And I would expect us to continue going up and hit around the 121 mark, 121, 122, somewhere there. And I expect us to do all that by the end of, towards the end of May. So we'll have, if I go back to the weekly chart, so we'd have another week going up, 12th of May, another week going up, 19th of May. So the next 3 weeks of going up, we hit this point here. Maybe we'll have another bullish consolidation for a while, and then, potentially send it all the way to about 154K. Then 54K, 160K, and then roll over and come and test these tops, and then maybe do a final kind of switch back into it before we kind of collapse really, or maybe we might end up going higher. But so Bitcoin is looking good on this chart. I think we'll close green, and I would expect us to go higher next week. We may do a small pullback. I'd expect us to go higher next week, and I expect us to go higher again the following week after. So keep your belts on. It's big moves are about to happen. So that's what I'm seeing on Bitcoin. And I will be stopping, and then James will share his thoughts.
So kind of the same thing with gold. We're here, the upper Bollinger, and how to trade this. I would trade this according to this Bollinger Band here. Let's take a look at the daily and see what's going on. We're well above. These moves tend to get fast and high. So, really, even last week, I'm saying, gotta be hesitant calling a top on something above the upper Bollinger. And you could see here, just nice bounce above and a close above. You're looking for closes. As you can see, there's wicks that are going down below, but you're looking for those closes. So it kind of takes patience. Back to the weekly. This was a close, or actually, let's see, we have 8 hours. Yep, 8 hours. So I would wait until, this closes. We are a decent $2,000 above it. So it's worth the wait, 8 hours to see how it closes. Very nice ping here. This is a very measured move considering we pinged off of this so deliberately of this blue candle. So it's kind of when you see something like that, this is a 1.618 extension. So there is going to be kind of downward force here. As you can see, we're kind of struggling. We're not getting a huge green candle out of this, signaling that like, okay, there's a lot here. This is, we're going to kind of see and wait how it closes and see how it prints. Um, and then we'll go from there because I think the script is no repainting. So it's not going to show you what it has until it's done. So we're gonna wait and we're gonna see. And if it's wants to print a big green candle like here, it might signal upward pressure. But getting printing above this upper line is half the battle. We got to have some follow through. So if we get hammered down here to this blue line, it's not going to look very good because it was such a measured move. I expect some downward, maybe sideways pressure here as we kind of work this out. It's gonna take a lot to really catapult us above here, and that's all I got for Bitcoin.